What's up, YouTube guys? If you are into the buying and selling game of mowers, this time of year, winter time, is the perfect time of year to start buying up mowers to resell in the spring. So let's go over a little bit of what I look for when going to buy a mower. First thing I look for is I look at tires. I look for, make sure the tires ain't flat, they'll hold air, because if you have to put tires on something, unless it's a nice unit, you're cutting into your profit. So that's one thing I look at, is the tires. Another thing I look at is the plastics. Make sure the plastics ain't all broke up, the hood ain't all broke up. Appearance does sell. I look at the seat. It's hard to get a seat in Texas that ain't cracked, but as long as it ain't like all completely gone, oftentimes you're okay. Seats are expensive, so if you have to replace a seat, another thing, cut into that profit. And then I lift up the engine, or I lift up the hood, take a look at the engine, take a look at, especially these engines, I take a look at the oil. This one's a little low. I smell the oil, make sure there ain't no gas in the oil, because these engines right here, you got these nickel carburetors, and they're bad for leaking gas into the oil, and sometimes that'll wash your cylinder, and it would cost you more money. Again, losing profit. So another thing, after I check the oil, I take my hand and I turn the engine to make sure I can turn the engine. It's kind of hard to do one-handed. Make sure I can turn the engine over, make sure it ain't locked up. Check, make sure it has a filter in there. It has a filter in there. And then from there, don't be afraid to take a jump pack with you. Always take a jump pack. I use a jump and carry. These are well worth the money. And what I do is I start back here and I'll hook into the battery and I'll see if it'll start from the battery. If it don't start from the battery side, I don't give up there, because it could just be a minor electrical thing. So what I do is I will come up here to our starter here, and I will find me a good ground spot for my negative, and then once that is done, then I'll just take and tap this with the positive, and that should crank that over, and that's let me know that that's working. And oftentimes it's like, if it's the key switch bad, you can pull this off right here, unhook this for a little bit, spray you something down into the mouth of the carburetor, not too much, you might catch on fire, and then crank it over and see if it'll hit on it, and if it hit on it, you're good to go. So that's one thing I check on it. 90% of the time it is carburetor issues, so check tires, that, bring your jump pack with you, and pretty much on the mower side. Hydraulics though, when you get to a hydraulic system, sometimes those could be iffy, so it's kind of a gamble sometimes when you buy those, if that's going to work, if the engine's not running. So try to keep your price cheap. When you get an on-road riding mower, try not to spend more than $100, $150, $150 if it's a good one. Zero turns, you can go up a little bit more on zero turns if it's a nice one, not a junkier one like the one we pulled the engine off of for the John Deere build. So let's go take a look at the decks and what we can look at on decks parts of this. All right, here's a deck right here. We can go, I actually think that might be the deck off the Craftsman right there. So one thing I'm looking at is the hangers. Oftentimes, this one's a bolt-on one. Oftentimes these hangers right here are broken. Now to me, it's not a big deal, I'll weld them, but if you don't have a welder and you have to pay someone to weld it, again, cutting into profits. So check your hangers on these, check your pulleys, make sure they ain't seized up. Check your belts. Sometimes these deck belts, sometimes they're cheap, but depending on the mower, some of the mowers have pricey deck belts, so keep an eye on that. Depends, like this Craftsman one, I can probably get this belt for $11, so that would be like no big deal. All right, we're gonna check. Lay it over here. It'll be harder once if it's on the mower, but it just reach your hand under there. And what you're gonna do is give it a little wiggle. Make sure the bearings ain't loose. Make sure you can slightly spin them free. Look for your castings if you can, and see if, make sure they ain't cracked. Sometimes these spindle housings crack, and that is pretty much it. Make sure your decks ain't rusted through, because a rusted through deck will cause you some issues that even welding won't really help you with, because once they start getting rusted like that, you're just best off replacing the whole deck. So let's get back to that other mower and we'll talk a little bit more what we learned today. So again, guys, the idea is to buy a mower, buy it as cheap as possible, but with the most minimum stuff. If you're trying to turn a profit, you don't really want to put a whole lot of money into something, because then you won't make a profit. And buying and selling is all about making a profit. If you ain't making a profit, you're just doing it for fun. So, and let me tell you, you can still do it for fun and make a profit. It's just, so anyway, just make sure you check your oil, make sure there's no gas in your oil, make sure it's not locked up. Try to turn it over. Bring a jump pack, starting fluid, some basic tools, starting fluid or gas, whatever you want to bring. Sometimes starting fluid can be a little harsh. You know, all about getting stuff with minimum work. Like if you had to rebuild this whole engine on an LT1000, I mean, this is an older unit. This ain't there would be no profit left in this unit. In fact, this one actually needs a cam. The ACR is bad on it. So yeah, guys, that's about what it is. It's all about minimizing the repairs and maximizing the profits. So I always make sure for good tires, make sure the plastics are good, and it's still a gamble when you're buying an engine. You can make sure it's not locked up and stuff, but you really can't take a compression test and a leak down test with you on the road to make sure there's not more internal issues. Most of the time there's not, but so there's always still that gamble. But I showed you what I look for, and that's the kind of the part about getting it as cheap as possible. I really don't like to spend more than $100 on a ride mower. I'll pay a little bit more for a zero turn, but I really, $100 is about where I'm at on riding mowers, buying a non-running one. So yeah, guys, I hope y'all learned something today. Get out there, start buying mowers. It's the perfect time of year to buy them. You buy them right now. You can also buy them in the first spring when people pull them out of the garage and they don't run. You can usually buy them pretty cheap too. But like I like to do is I like to buy them up in the winter time. You got that tax refund time coming around. People's got that extra money to spend, and that's when they're going to be paying big money for this. To me, would be a $300 machine. At tax refund time would be a $600 or $700 machine. So get out there, buy you some mowers. Anyway, guys, if you haven't already hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Share this out. Let's make it one of the smallest, best small engine streams on the YouTube channels on YouTube. And I will see you all next time in the shop. Later, everyone.